I'm Chance Dorland, and this is The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. And as it's almost always the case, I'm joined now by San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala. Great to have you back here on the program, Liz. It's the holiday time, and we have something special planned for today's episode.
Yes, Chance. We're going to talk about a story that I've wanted to write for a while because I have a soft place in my heart for veterans growing up in San Antonio. Every branch of the military is represented in my family. So when last year, Felony Veterans Treatment Court formed as one of the 11 specialty courts offered in Bexar County, I wanted to take a look at that story, and because there's a very large presence of military in San Antonio.
Of course, yeah. Military City is another podcast that I work on every week or every other week with Sid Christensen, a fellow reporter for the San Antonio Express News. So this is one of the special courts that you just mentioned that's contained in Bexar County. Tell me about it. How does it work?
Okay, Felony Veterans Treatment Court is it's pretty specialized. It began on November 7th of last year in a very interesting ceremony. The Bexar County Sheriff's Office has a color guard, and they marched into the courtroom of Judge Lori Valenzuela in the 437th State District Court. And it was just a very, very good ceremony last year for Veterans Day, which we celebrated recently. And this particular court is aimed at veterans. There has to be what the case manager tells me. His name is John Herman. He said there has to be a nexus between the person's felony offense and their military experience. There has to be some sort of link between the crime and their military service. So these particular felonies that this particular court takes into consideration would be drug, alcohol, assault charges. None of this would have anything to do with like rape, murder, aggravated robberies, or serious, assaults that involve serious bodily injury or assault with a deadly weapon. So these are cases that, that a team of people will take a look at on a case-by-case basis. And they actually do have a team that consists of Judge Valenzuela, her colleague, and across the hall neighbor, Judge Jefferson Moore, who is over the 186th State District Court, and two people from the DA's office, two probation officers, someone from the Veterans Affairs office here in San Antonio, and then they have their own case manager. And I've just heard that they now have some mentors that are going to be working with the 18 participants that they have at this point for this particular court.
So not only is all that very different than, a typical trial in Bexar County, it also looks very different. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's kind of, it is very different. It's a much smaller setting, of course, but what they have now on Thursdays around 3:00, Judge Valenzuela begins in her 437th State District Court with the veterans docket. And the veterans that are attached to her court will go in there. And when everything starts, the first thing that everybody does is they recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And then one by one, Judge Valenzuela will call up the participants to the bench, and they will walk up, Chance, and you can definitely tell that these men and women have been in the service because of how they stand just perfectly straight with their hands behind their back, facing the judge in a very military stance. I remember seeing my father stand like this a lot, and my brother at times as well. So they will actually go up to the bench, and it becomes almost like a personal conversation. I've watched Judge Valenzuela and Judge Moore do this in their court. They will ask the participant, "How's your week been?" Because chance they see these participants every week. This is how intense this particular program is. They'll see them. They keep journals, and the judges will actually ask them what they did and what challenges they might have faced. Is there anything from the week that they should celebrate, and that sort of thing. And it's a very polite conversation. It's very professional, and it's also very caring, because you can really see the care that Judge Valenzuela puts in each one of the participants that go before her bench. And also for Judge Moore, his veterans docket is also conducted on Thursdays, but it's at 3:30, so about 30 to 40 minutes, give or take, after Judge Valenzuela. So when Judge Moore's participants go in, they do very much the same thing. But Judge Moore has told me that this is a very special place in his heart, because Judge Moore, he was a JAG in the military. I think that is Judge Advocate General. Basically, he was a lawyer in the Army. And he has spent a lot of time with veterans. And, as someone who served in the armed forces for a very long time, you can definitely tell in how he deals with his participants that it's very close to his heart.
So we've got the basic premise down, Elizabeth, but then how does this actually work? If I was a veteran or someone else was a veteran who had an accusation of one of these crimes that you mentioned, so obviously not every felony, but just the ones that fall into the areas that are covered by this program, how does that work? What do they have to do?
Well, the veterans, they have to write a letter to this team of people who supervise felony veterans treatment court. So they basically have to put everything out there on a letter. And from there, they have certain things that they have to achieve. Their goals are, of course, supervised treatment in this program that is going to offer various methods and treatment options. And while they participate in this, they are going to promote for the veteran education and employment so that they can live a healthy and sustainable lifestyle. And, of course, the end game is to be a productive member of the community while abstaining from substance abuse and criminal behavior. So, they have to basically do everything that is required of the program. And and when I say it's intense because the people who participate have to meet with people involved in this program every week. And that entails counseling, mentoring sessions, drug testing, and, that sort of thing, while they go through this particular program.
And so, as you've mentioned already, Elizabeth, there are some requirements for this program, and I just want to make sure I'm on the same page with you. So this is a pending felony offense. So you haven't already been convicted? Is that the case?
Right. There has to be a pending felony case. And as I mentioned earlier, they will review every single case before them, with the team, which I said, has the DA's office members on it, as well as two defense attorneys. And when they all review these, they can pretty much tailor, a particular set program for the person, depending upon what they're going through. But yes, you have to be a veteran of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, National Guard. You have to have a discharge form that is called DD 214, and again, the pending felony offense. And you've got to be a U.S. citizen or a legal resident, and again, be willing to attend a VA mental health assessment. So, it's very specific as to, Bexar County has a lot of specialty courts, and I've written about many of them, and they all have very specific things, requirements that you have to meet. So, this is very, very specific as far as aimed toward a veteran.
You're listening to The Docket, a new weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com, brought to you by our sponsor, the law offices of Pat Maloney. And then Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like this type of program is almost for an individual who fits into the categories that you just mentioned, but is also sort of taking ownership for the offense they're accused of. So am I incorrect in assuming that most likely someone in this position would be taking a plea deal or accepting fault for the crime that they're accused of?
Well, that is a really good question, Chance, because, there's a lot of things that could happen here. In my discussions with John Herman, who again is the case manager for both of the judges in this particular program, they have to go through the program before they can decide what they're going to do with any of those pending offenses. So they're seen every week. Sometimes during the first phase of this, they're going to have to meet at least 4 times a week. But this program is going to be anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And then after they've completed nearly 2 years of this program, they have to go into an aftercare program that basically will just keep tabs on them. And while this is going on, the team is discussing, things like pretrial diversion. The charges are going to stay the same. But, Chance, the main thing that's going to happen here is that they are going to be offered rewards or other particular avenues, depending upon how they do in the program, other, ways. So in other words, at the time that the punishment would be, handed out, they will know exactly how this person has done in the program. So if they've maintained, and done everything that they are supposed to do, their punishment may not entirely be, the full discretion of what the law allows for that. So, you may not get a lengthy prison sentence. Maybe you end up getting some sort of pretrial diversion program where they put you on a pre-probation before you actually get the regular probation, just to kind of see how you do. So everybody who participates in this program, even though the charges will not go away, there's going to be a lot of input as to what kind of punishment someone will receive for that particular offense.
And then, as we've mentioned, Elizabeth, not every felony offense, there's going to be certain types of offenses that are going to be more common with this type of program. And I think there's 2 of them that take up at least a large chunk of what's covered in here.
Yes. The felony offenses that have been brought forth right now have been mostly drug and alcohol related. But when you think about it, Chance, when you bring in a mental health issue like depression or anxiety, and then you compound it with post-traumatic stress disorder, which, sitting in these veterans docket calls, that comes up a lot. Things can get pretty rough, for a person. You've got, right now you've got people who are still suffering from 2 or 3 tours of duty in Iraq or in Afghanistan, in places where there have been a lot of people, a lot of military members who have been killed, a lot who have been maimed. And then when you take somebody and you bring them back into, I guess, what we would consider to be normal, when you've gone through all of that trauma, people have discussed that, in court with judges that, they may not know exactly how, to re-enter regular society. So they end up, the veterans that are going through this court, I think, just in my observation, listening in court, have a lot more difficulties than a regular person who maybe just doesn't care and just decides they're going to go and commit a crime. You know what I mean? So I think as this court evolves, and especially with the team that's going with it, I think that we're going to see much more participation. I was glad to hear that it's been going on for a year now, and right now they have 18 people that are participating, and they're like right in the middle of this first phase. That's going to be anywhere from an 18 to 24 month program. So, and I think, it will definitely be something that we will talk about again, because I'm hoping that I'll be able to talk with some of these participants, and they'll be able to share their stories for us.
And it seems very fitting to perhaps end today's conversation where you began the conversation at the beginning of the episode, why this is so important for San Antonio and Bexar County.
Yes, you mentioned my esteemed colleague, Sid Christensen, and he has really done a great job, reporting on San Antonio and military in general for the Express News. Last year, he reported that Bexar County has about 60,000 active duty personnel, nearly $4 billion in military payroll, 84,000 military retirees, and 211,000 veterans. So that is a lot of military people that have a direct tie to Bexar County. So, it seems only logical to me that you would have a particular court like this. And I will say that there has been a veterans treatment court going on the misdemeanor side in Bexar County for some time now. But actually, this court itself is going to handle the felony offenses. So we'll be talking more about this, in the coming months, Chance, because like I said, I'm hoping that we can get a few veterans to let us have a little bit of insight into what they are going through in this new program.
And thanks as always to San Antonio Express News courts and crime reporter Elizabeth Zavala for joining me for today's episode of The Docket, our weekly interview program covering law and crime in San Antonio from expressnews.com. Brought to you today by the law offices of Pat Maloney. For the San Antonio Express News, I'm Chance Dorland.